Hello everyone, welcome to the first lecture of BIOT110 class. We'll be talking about the overview of parenteral drug product development and manufacturing process through this lecture. Okay, let's see. Introduction, we'll skip it. I hope you already know who I am. Some of you already took some classes from me, but if this is the first class with me, welcome to my class. So my name is Seung-Young Lee. I'll be your instructor. Hopefully I had a meeting with you through advising or some other opportunities. But anyway, I'll be the instructor for you, so I'll be narrating my lectures and labs and posting those in your course shell. So you'll be able to listen my lecture and lab and then study yourself. Lab will be able to meet face-to-face, but I think during the first 2 weeks, the college decided to not to meet any classes face-to-face. Let's try to navigate through this worsening pandemic. So instead, I'll be narrating the lab, and then we will meet virtually. So hope you can join me through the Zoom meeting. You can find the Zoom link from your Zoom link in your course shell. If you have time, you can maybe check out this safety information at Ivy Tech. It tells you about how to be cautious when you walk in the space at Ivy Tech. Okay. First of all, the types of the pharmaceutical products. So this course will teach you about drug product manufacturing processes, the theories and skills that are needed in those processes. So before you talk about those, we're going to talk about some fundamental concepts and terminology in this industry. Okay, so you probably heard some of these terms, and you maybe already know what these means, but there may be some of you who do not understand what these are. So for those of you, I'm giving you these explanations. Okay, first of all, when you talk about pharmaceutical products, there are so-called small molecule-based pharmaceutical products as well as large molecule-based pharmaceutical products. Okay, when you say small molecule-based drugs, what do they mean? How small are those? Or when they say large molecule-based drugs, mostly those are biological molecules. And what do they mean? How large are those? Right? So when people say small molecule drugs, mainly those are chemical-based drugs. So thinking about maybe a pill of aspirin or a pill-based drug of something, like a Tylenol or something, right? So those are purely chemical molecules, compounds, so they are relatively small. So that's why they call small molecule drugs. Compared to those, if your drug is made out of some biological molecules like proteins or DNA, they are much larger than those small molecule drugs that are chemical-based. So they may be 1,000 times larger. So that's why they are called or considered as large molecule drugs. Typically, those are biological drugs made out of proteins or maybe DNA, RNA molecules. And those are maybe recombinant proteins. That could be another term you can use to describe those large molecule drugs, recombinant proteins. Okay, so understand the differences. So when we talk about pharmaceutical products in this class, we will be mostly focusing on these large molecule drugs because those are the drugs that are made by most of our potential employers in our area. Okay, so large molecule biological drugs, that's what we'll be talking about. And then another terminology that is important is so-called enteral drug versus parenteral drugs. Okay, enteral versus parenteral. What do they mean? Those are kind of foreign terms, right? Maybe they probably come from Greek. Okay, enteral means it's your bodily cavity, like your mouth and your anus. So in between there are your gastro tracts, right? So intestinal tract or your stomach. So you have those in your body. So if your drug is going into your body through your mouth, okay, we consider those drugs as internal drugs. Okay, so those are probably pill-based drugs. Again, those small molecular drugs normally taken through orally, right? So when you take those orally, you swallow them and it goes into your stomach, and they will be melted, and then they will be absorbed through your stomach. So maybe it's absorbed through stomach, or maybe through your intestine. Okay, or maybe some drugs can be given rectally through an anus, right? So if you do that, and those are all considered enteral drugs. Okay, and on the other side there are parenteral drugs. Parenteral means those drugs that are not given enterally. So then how do you give your drug? Normally through the injection or patches or some kind of devices. Okay, so your drug will be absorbed through your skin or organ or muscles or CNS system or circulatory system like your blood vessels, or intravenous, meaning through your maybe muscles or fat tissues. Okay, so those are called parenteral drugs. Okay, in other words, you can call them as maybe injectable drugs. Normally that's how you administer your drug. Okay, so enteral versus parenteral drugs, understand the differences. Then normally the biological drugs are given parenterally. So biological drugs are parenteral drugs. Okay, you can guess the reason why, right? If you take biological drugs like maybe DNA, RNA, or proteins through orally, then what happens? Maybe proteins may be denatured because in your stomach there's a strong acid, stomach acid, that's like pH 2. So most of the biological drugs will be degraded before they be absorbed and before they work. So you cannot give biological drugs enterally. That's why you have to give biological drugs parenterally, right? So understand why biological drugs are parenterally. So by giving biological drugs parenterally, you're actually bypassing body's defensive system, but we can talk about that later on. Okay. Another important terms are so-called brand name drugs versus generic drugs. You're familiar with those terms, right? Brand name drugs are relatively expensive, and those are drugs that are sold by probably the companies who invented, who have the patent on those drugs. So they have the right for that drug making and sale on the market because they have the patent. Their drugs are being protected. Versus generic drugs are maybe manufactured and sold by the companies who didn't actually invent, and eventually the patent runs out after a certain time, right? If a patent is running out, then any drug manufacturers can make the same drug, okay, because the patent doesn't protect the drug anymore. Okay, so and at that time, then drug companies can make probably same drug, maybe similar, probably same active ingredient. They may make a little different way, but they can manufacture those drugs. When they do that, the drug price will go down because they didn't have to invest a lot of money for the R&D to come up with that drug. So these generic drug makers should be able to sell those drugs cheaper. So those are generic drugs. Okay, so then why do the FDA allow those generic drugs? The reason is simple. Try to make more of those drugs available for the customers, you guys, so you can afford those drugs. Okay, so brand name versus generic, understand the difference. Okay, and then the prescription drug versus over-the-counter drugs. Okay, so difference you understand, right? Prescription drugs, you have to get a prescription from your doctor to be able to buy that, to use it, right? And over the counter, you don't need to see a doctor to buy that drug and use it. So what's the difference? Probably it's the relative safety. Maybe there may be a way of administering. There may be difference. Because of that, prescription drugs are a little more protected that way. Okay, so understand the difference. And then blockbuster drugs versus orphan drugs. And what is the difference? Blockbuster drugs, the name says all. I mean, it's the drug that gives a lot of revenue for the drug manufacturer. If the drug is sold and bringing the revenue over $1 billion per year in the market, we consider those drugs as blockbuster drugs. Okay, so drug manufacturers make a lot of money through those drugs, right? And then the other side, orphan drugs. Okay, meaning the drug, is sold and manufactured and sold, but the the market size is small because the patient size who are suffering with that medical condition, it's probably a rare case disease. So maybe there may be 100,000 people in the world suffering with those kind of medical condition. Then the market size for that drug is not that large, right? Because of nature. So the orphan drug is normally a small market drug. There are only maybe less than 200,000 patients in the world. Then we consider that as an orphan drug. And then the question is, then would the drug manufacturers invest money to come up with a drug and manufacture, because of the fact that there isn't enough market for them? Okay, so to solve the problem, the FDA will provide some incentives for these drug manufacturers. Okay, so they will probably help them to go through the clinical trials faster phase, and they give some protective the rules for them to be selling those drugs. Okay, so they incentivize the drugs. So we call those drugs orphan drugs. Okay, so understand the differences. Okay, so anyway, if you click on this link, you will see maybe top 20 drugs that are sold in year 2020. Okay, so and see what kind of drugs were top 20 drugs in the world. Let's take a look at those. There you go. Okay, according to this I guess journal, they came up with the list. So number one drug in the market in the world in year 2020 was Humira. Okay, Humira. What kind of drug was it? Humira is, of course, a recombinant protein drug. Okay, it sold about $14 billion. So the company is AbbVie Biotech, and then they made a lot of money. Sales $14 billion. And what kind of drug is that? See, it's an injectable drug, right? So it's used against inflammatory conditions, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, so it's probably antibody-based drug. It's a parenteral drug, so that's a number one drug in the market. Okay, and how about number two drug? What is that? Number two was what? Revlimid. Okay, if you click on it, so sold by Celizan, $5.8 billion in year 2015, and 2020 they made $10.2 billion. What kind of drug is that? It's anti-cancer drug, multiple myeloma, skin cancer. So you can take, this is a pill-based drug, enteral drug. Okay, number two drug. And then number three was what? Opdivo was again anti-cancer drug. It's the Bristol Myers Squibb's PD-1 immuno-oncology drug. So it's an anti-cancer drug. They sold about $942 million 2015. Okay, $8.4 billion. That's a big increase in 5 years. So again, it's what? Parenteral drug, injectable drug. Okay, probably protein-based drug. Okay, that's number three. How about number four? Harvoni by Gilead Science. Okay, it's against hepatitis C. That's a pill-based drug. $7.7 billion in year 2020. Okay, number five, Prevnar 13, again injectable drug. As you can see, it's against it's a pneumococcal vaccine. It's a vaccine against pneumococcal disease. Okay, so it sold $6.9 billion. So you can see a lot of injectable drugs that are protein-based, probably almost like 50% or above in the top 20 drugs. Okay, so understand the importance of those parenteral drugs. Okay, so this graph shows you the difference in the sizes, right? So aspirin versus monoclonal antibody drugs. So recombinant protein drug versus pill-based drugs. That's the difference. Small molecule drug versus large molecule drugs. Erythropoietin is another injectable drug made with the protein. Insulin is another peptide drug. Again, a small protein, but again, if you compare to the pill-based drug, it's much larger. You can see the difference, all right? So understand that.